Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, as always, David Dant. I hope you guys don't get bored of me. I'm doing this for a long time. I really enjoy it. I have a couple of really cool guests with me on the show today. We're going to talk about InfoComm, which is coming up in just about a week. Joining me is Steph Beckett. Steph, introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steph. I am the managing editor at rAVe, which is a publication here in the AV industry. It's been around probably 20 years, and I have been in my role for about 6 years. So, yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be, I think, my ninth InfoComm. So, yeah.
You're going to hit double digits in a little while. And Steph, we're all thinking about Gary K. We know he just had a little bit of surgery recently, so hopefully we'll see him at
Mhm.
the show for a little bit. But send him our regards, and we know that that means you're picking up all the slack. So thanks for taking the time to join us. And
Of
speaking of not
course.
having any time for anything, Irwin Lazar is joining us. Irwin, you're luckily very busy as an analyst, right? Tell everybody again who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi, I'm Irwin Lazar, President and Principal Analyst at Metrigy. I lead our coverage around communications and collaboration, so I cover video and AV as part of that. Somewhere around fifth InfoComm, so I'm still, I guess, relatively new to the conference.
So yeah, I really haven't thought about the numbers, but I know I went to InfoComm in the 1980s. So, maybe, 89 or something like that. So, I'm well into the double digits right now. I used to be very involved in doing the programming for the show. I've since stepped back from that quite a bit, or when I'm happily being a speaker on your panel, but we have different perspectives here. We have the perspectives of an analyst, of a consultant, of a journalist. We got a lot of things going on over here. So I guess let's start with what do we think are the biggest stories that are happening at or coming out of InfoComm this year? Irwin, let's start with you. What do you think, from a thematic standpoint, is going to be things for people to watch this year?
Yeah, and I guess I'll limit my observations to the communication collaboration track, so our unified communications collaboration. So I think one is just kind of how are companies dealing with the economic uncertainty right now and the prospect of tariffs and what impact is that having on vendors, on pricing, on supply chains, on the buyer side. I think that is going to be interesting to hear about. And I'd say the second big area already in the pre-briefs I'm getting is around the growth of the Microsoft ecosystem, new products, new services, support for MDEP. I think that's going to be a big area. I'm running two panels at the session. One is focused on return to the office and how can companies rethink their meeting spaces to ensure that when people come in, they have as good, if not better, experience than they have at home. Kind of earn the commute. And then the second one that David is on with me is focused around AI. You'll probably hear at least one or two speakers talk about AI at some point during the week. But here we're talking about, the risks of AI and what do people need to know and how do you safely roll out AI? How do you address things like privacy and image capture, voice capture, and so on.
Yeah. Now, Steph, I know you follow the UC space, but you also have a broader
Mhm.
AV perspective. What about you? What are the
Yep.
big things that you're expecting to see at the show this year?
So, yeah, a lot of the same thing. I think that we are seeing a lot of just uncertainty based around the tariffs. So I think a lot of people have held back announcements or moved them. So it's kind of like just generally the wild, wild west right now in AV. It's like a good way to describe it. In terms of UC, though, we are seeing a ton of Microsoft certifications right now. Like I have gotten so much news about Microsoft certifications. Also, so much about AI translation services being built into different UC platforms. Jabra just came out with something for this recently, and like kind of integrating call center technology with UC technology, which is what Enterprise Connect, the show, has been doing for years. But a lot of that. And a big one that I have seen is Google rebranding Project Starline as Google Beam now. So that very futuristic, talking to a hologram meeting technology being officially rebranded, repackaged as something that's like real and shippable, allegedly. So they're going to bring that to InfoComm too, and I'm sure that that is going to gather a lot of interest. Even though, I mean, like I think that this is kind of the same technology that was like, what were those? It was like early 2000s. What
Telepresence.
were telepresence? Like this is essentially that, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
I've got a big
well,
article on that right now. And Irwin, I know you've got an article coming out imminently as well, covering Google Beam. Without rehashing all of that there, and I'll put a link in here so people can read it if they're
sure.
interested. But without rehashing that, it's difficult to launch a product behind the curtain for 4 years and have it meet anyone's expectations. So
Right, absolutely.
that the buildup is so big. I think I wrote in the article that it would have to lay golden eggs and cure diseases in order to meet the hype that it's generated, and that's its fault. You either have a
Yeah.
product you don't. I don't mind manufacturers. I've worked with manufacturers and I've spoken to many manufacturers. Lean into your announcements. If you got a product coming out in 4, 5, 6 months, go for it. Be the first one out there to talk about it. But 4 years. Man, the wolves aren't coming at this point now. I don't. It's going to take a lot to actually believe it. So, yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we're seeing a lot of, and I'll echo all of your comments on MDEP and Microsoft. I remember the first year
Mhm.
Microsoft finally agreed to do InfoComm. They had big white empty tables and no booth, and nobody was there. And now MDEP is essentially the story of the show, where we've got a lot of
Yeah.
people producing products, and a number of them are pre-announcing. They want to get their news out before the show. But as you look through the news releases that I'm getting and some of the pre-briefs, we're all the three of us have seen. I don't want to do the I've got a secret stuff, but we've all seen NDA presentations and some pre-briefs going on. There is some interesting new technology coming out that we've not seen before. That I think it's going to be hard to pick it out through the weeds, but definitely all of us are going to try and help bring that to the people that follow what we do. I mean, do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I do think so. I think that of all years for something, not necessarily disruptive, but a little bit different to happen, I think this is a good year for that. A lot of people are back. We're full-fledged back into trade show swing of things. If ISC's attendance numbers tell us anything, it's that, we are for sure ready to be back in person at a show. So I do think companies that have kind of been holding on to something that they've been developing for a few years and are releasing it now at InfoComm. I think this is a really good year for them to do that. But yeah, I do think people are developing a lot of new and interesting things and new ways to harness AI is kind of what I'm noticing, because last year it was all about like, how do we use AI? Like everyone's using it. Like, how are we going to do it? We have to use it too. Everyone's doing it. And I think this year people are like manufacturers are starting to be like, okay, well, how do we use it better than other people?
Yeah, I'd say one area where I'm seeing a lot of interest now is around using AI on the management side. You look at what a company like NetSpeak is doing, where
Yeah,
you're not only taking AI to improve the audio and video experience, which has almost become table stakes now, but how do I use AI to improve the management capabilities, to do provisioning, to do troubleshooting, to automate response when there is an issue. We saw Cisco and Control Hub build AI functionality in a couple of years ago now at this point, and so I expect you'll see a lot more interest in reducing management, reducing operational costs going forward.
Yeah. And Steph, you brought up translation before as a function of AI.
hmm
It was really interesting. When Microsoft showed their real-time or near real-time translation, everybody was going, wow, that's amazing. We've never seen that before. And within maybe a month or two, everybody else
yeah,
came out with theirs. So,
yeah. Everyone's like, well, actually, we've been working on that too, so we have the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, you get this is it's really a race. Like when Jabra put out their Panicast 40, which was the first video bar using Microsoft MDEP. We saw
hmm
Yealing's announcement about a week or so ago that they said they've got the first MDEP video bar for large rooms. So we're going to see a lot of these. We've got the first thing that's red on Tuesday when it's raining, and everybody's wants to
Yeah,
be the first at something. But
that's
then again,
something.
I would say, definitely follow what NetSpeak is doing, as you pointed out, Irwin. And I've always had to point out that I was an early advisor of theirs, so I want to do that. I would definitely follow what a couple of the other companies are doing there. You have rAVe is going to come out with some tremendously new news there. That I don't. Again, we're not going to reveal anything that we know, but it's very disruptive. And products and solutions that haven't existed before. I mentioned Yealink, that they've got a camera that's got 4 elements on it. It's got a PTZ element, and then it's got 3 EPTZs on the bottom. So you stick one camera in, and you get 4 shots out of it, and it's all got AI processing at the edge. So again, I think if you wade through some of the things that are going on, I think what do you guys think of the new the Hudley C1 video bar that came out? Did you get a chance to see it? They've pre-announced it before the show, and we've been
Yes.
spending the last 4 years on video bars that all look pretty much the same, and they're warm and fuzzy and curved edges and all the rest of that stuff. And then they come out with their rigid box square, and it's kind of refreshing to go back to that.
Yeah. I think okay, I think we are saturated in terms of video bars in this market. So if you were going to come out with one, it better be different than all of the other ones on the market. And Hudley definitely did that. I am a big proponent of Hudley's products. I think that they have a refreshing take on unified communication technology in that they think of themselves as a software company that happens to just make cameras as well. So I think with this mindset, that kind of sets them apart. And I love all their products. I think that they work extremely well. I've like used some of them myself. So in terms of a video bar, I'd honestly probably pick that one to go in the room because I think it looks better than any of the other ones I've seen on the market recently, honestly.
It's interesting, like you said, the market's saturated. Everybody has a video bar now, and I think we've heard in a recent briefing that you kind of have to have the full set of devices in order to achieve Microsoft certification. It's hard now for somebody to just sell one component of the room and not have that label on it that says certified by Microsoft. I think one of the things that I've been watching for the last couple of years, I think continues to be a challenge is how much innovation happens in the device versus how much is happening in the software. David, you mentioned the real-time translation. We saw it from Microsoft. We just saw it recently from Google. We see the ability to use AI to enhance the image through in a number of the software vendors. So I think it's still a challenge for those hardware vendors to just not be a camera at the edge, but continue to add value and continue to differentiate themselves versus, we're just going to send a video feed into Google, Zoom, Cisco, Microsoft, whoever, and let them handle all of the fun AI stuff.
So let's talk for a second about Microsoft. And I don't want to say I love them and I don't want to say I hate them. This is neither, it's not judgment, but it's
Right.
interesting. I think we could all agree that the video collaboration experience on Microsoft Teams is not the best one that's out there in the market. From a quality standpoint, from a feature standpoint, it's good. It's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And by being good enough, they've essentially overtaken everybody else in the market because of the ubiquity, I guess. So is that a statement on AV? We've been arguing about what is good enough for probably like 30 years, and the argument is still there. But if you don't have a Microsoft Teams certified device, you're not playing in the space anymore. And it's interesting that they've taken over with what is clearly not the best or highest quality product. It's just the most available. Irwin, what do you think about that?
I think you're going to see that hypothesis put to the test with Google Beam that we just talked about. Google Beam is a much better experience for a one-on-one meeting than anything on the market today. But is it enough that people are going to say, I've got a nice desktop camera, I've got good room systems, I've got Teams, that's good enough. We have continued to see a strong trend toward Microsoft in the space, although, Zoom's continuing to hold their own, Cisco as well. But mostly it's because of, well, I already get it with my Microsoft license. Why do I need to pay extra for something else? I'd say, we continue to see other vendors trying to find ways to find a piece of that. Another trend that we're seeing that's driving somewhat of market consolidation is AI. We published a study last year where we went out to companies who are best of breed shops, meaning they might have, Microsoft for some parts and for something else. And about a quarter to a third of them were saying, we're going to consolidate all on Microsoft, all on Google, because we want to feed all of the data from all of our different collaboration apps into our AI engine. So, that changes the game a little bit.
Yeah. Steph, what do you think about this concept of good enough? I know I will post an article and I write for you guys and for a whole bunch of other places about something that I think is a trend that's changing. And I'll typically have at least 2 or 3 people challenging me on it. Well, that's only good enough. It's not really the way it should be.
Right.
Do you still see that undercurrent in our space?
Yes. because no one's ever going to build anything that's perfect to every single use case and every single person. So I do think that it's just going to kind of be good enough or great enough, even, but nothing's ever going to be like absolutely perfect, especially not in a space that's changing as frequently as you see. So yeah, I do think that that's just going to have to be how it is for like ever, unfortunately. Um, but in terms of Teams, I do think that like the beauty of Teams is that the video conferencing part of their business is like just that, just part of the business, and they have this full suite of everything. So, you know, with other products, you don't necessarily use the full suite, you use other things. But with Teams, it's like people use everything that goes with Teams, and like the beauty is how it all works together. So even though like yeah, the platform itself is like not my favorite to use, it's you know, I see the vision in terms of like how great the full suite of products is, and that's kind of why they're beating everybody else, is like because they've put a lot of like money and development into all of the other products that go along with the video conferencing portion. So but yeah, I do think that they're like, well, you know, the video conferencing portion that works well enough that no one's going to stop using us. So great.
All right, so why don't we I'll let you guys think for a second and I'll babble on for a minute about something that I want to make sure that people go and take a look at the show and don't miss. I guess I'll talk about QSC, the QSys
Mm,
platform. They were just bought by Acuity a little while ago, and they just came out with their Activate program. Patrick Kane was on this show, I think last week, and we were talking about this whole concept of full stack AV, which they introduced at InfoComm last year, and now they actually have products. And interestingly, at Yealing's presentation that they did online about a week ago, they're now talking about full stack AV. Not that anybody is unoriginal, and well, I won't get into the cultural pieces of that, but yeah, are we now talking about companies that are hitting the market saying, buy all of our stuff because you probably don't need very much of anything else. We can do it all. We can do the control. We can do, the setup, the programming, the cloud, the edge. So that would be my suggestion. Make sure that you take a look at what QSC's got going on. See if you can get out of their escape room that they've got going on over there. And that would be my not to miss. So what about you guys? What do you think that would be? Again, you can mention a vendor or a style or a sector, but what do you think would be your not to miss at the show this year? Irwin, you want to go first?
Sure. I think it's going to be Project Beam. I think folks should at least take a look at it, see it. If it succeeds in the market, you're going to see a very quick movement by other vendors to copy it. But just because it's something innovative, it's something we haven't seen since Halo-based solutions from Microsoft, God, it's probably more than 10 years ago, and Cisco had a hologram offering a couple of years ago. So I think those are always interesting, just to see something new in the space.
Yeah, the problem that I have multiple problems with Veeam, but the interesting thing is they announced partnerships last year. One of the partnerships they announced was with Zoom.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to Zoom about that, they said, well, we're not really involved in the Beam experience, but if you're connecting the Beam experience to everybody else, they use Zoom. So you can now be on a Zoom call and see what's going on the Starline or Beam or whatever we're calling it this week's experience, but you're just getting it as a regular call. And the part of, from a human nature standpoint, if you're experiencing that without the bells and whistles and it works, every time you do that, you're proving that you don't need it. So,
yeah.
I think that's going to be a very difficult barrier to overcome. But I would agree with you. People should take a look at it. I hope it's not behind a curtain anymore. I hope people can simply walk up, that you don't have to make an appointment 6 weeks ago and sign in your name and give them your email. I hope they're ready to show an actual product instead of just saying shh right now. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens. What about you, Steph? What's your not to miss? If you want to air an opinion on that, feel free. But definitely looking for your thoughts as well. What's a not to miss from the show?
Not to miss. I don't know that it's a technical like product, but I will like tell the people who are attending InfoComm that I think you should look for the ways that different industries are converging at this show and start to gain some interest in that. Look at the products that are kind of starting to meld the IT and AV industries. Look at the companies that technically used to only do pro AV that are now coming out with broadcast technology. Aver just announced that they are coming out with a full like professional broadcast camera, and that's not a coincidence, right? That's kind of where the industry's going. Take a look at what Plexus AV is doing. I think that they have some really beautiful ideas about, opening the standard and being able to, go from, a room that was using, sending a signal over Cat6, but then now transferring it and using the SIMD 2110. I think that, yeah, looking at those standards is going to be really interesting. It hasn't quite taken off like I would like to see yet, but I'm hoping that maybe that changes very soon. Also the open AV cloud, the new
Mhm.
group that was announced last week. They are all about opening APIs in Pro AV, and they have had a lot of backing recently. Like really big companies are backing this whole initiative, which I think is fantastic and exciting. So there's a lot of like interesting things happening. Like there's a lot of rumblings of changes in the industry. So I would just like recommend that everyone pay attention to that and then try to learn while you're at InfoComm.
The
Yeah.
interesting thing about open standards, and this is me talking after 46 years of trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Having having
Okay.
having watched this industry for this long, the companies that are loudest talking about we want an open standards are typically the ones who could have been embracing an open standard probably for a decade. They'd rather embrace the concept of being part of the group than actually do anything about opening the standards. I hope this new initiative is not that, but I'm definitely going into it with quite a bit of skepticism, saying, you know what, we could have been doing this a long time ago. You didn't need to wait for somebody to start a group. So I bet you're right. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, and part of the way our industry is sort of ebbing and flowing through all of this stuff.
Well,
Okay.
the thing about opening up like your own standards is other people have to open it up too to talk to you. So I get why no manufacturer wants to be like the first one to do it, to be like, we're open, but no one wants to be open with us. Like that's embarrassing. So I do see like the purpose of this group, but I do totally get where you're coming from, Dave, where I hope it's like they're gonna put their money where their mouth is and like things are gonna actually start changing around here and we're gonna actually take like some advice and some notes from what IT is doing.
Yeah, let's hope so. As soon as InfoComm is over, I've got a white paper that I wrote out on interoperability, like a 10, 12 page history and current status. And it's only for our subscribers right now, but once InfoComm starts, I'm going to open it up to everybody. And I talk about how we track through that. I mean, Cisco used to be the worst closed walled garden until they bought Tandberg. And then all of a sudden they were the wildest open standards, but Microsoft is in the walled garden. And we've been going through this forever. And you know what? AI is smart. Whether you love it or hate it or think it's coming too fast or too slow, you could put AI into any one of these video conferencing endpoints and have it look at your calendar and say, oh, that's a Teams call. Let's invoke Teams. Oh, that's a Zoom call. Let's invoke Zoom. But they won't do it for business reasons, not for
Licensing, yeah.
technical reasons. So, I'm always going to be a little bit skeptical about groups that want to get together and say, hey, look at how great and open we are instead of actually just doing what they need to do to open it up. So it's
How many
interesting.
years were we talking about why can't we make a video call as easily as a phone call? If you really
And
want to
and
get into
The answer
interoperability
is in that
discussion.
answers in that white paper is because the
Yeah,
telephone was invented under a monopoly, and video
exactly. Yeah.
conferencing was created in an open, capitalistic business thing where everybody wanted to see their competitors die while smiling at them. So it's all very interesting. All right, so let's do a last bit of this for logistics. How about one tip about making the show better and making your experience better? And let's leave the easy ones off. Let's not talk about wear comfortable shoes and you don't have to dress up for the show. It's a polo shirt kind of show, but anything that you suggest, Irwin, about making this a valuable experience?
I think coming to our session is certainly tops on the list. That's at 2:30 on Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes.
And so we'll be talking, like I said, about AI and AI safety and compliance and governance and all those fun topics. And then my other session on Tuesday morning at 8:30. So that'll be an early one, focused on getting return to the office right. I think, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, just taking advantage of the educational opportunities that are there. I think there's a lot of good content on the program from what I've seen.
Especially on Tuesday when the show floor is not open, unless you're
Yeah.
an analyst or an exhibitor or something like that. It's always worth it to catch some of those sessions. What about you, Steph? Any logistic? And again, I'll give you the pass to stop by the rAVe booth and play the game and pick up your shirt. But
Oh,
Yeah.
we don't have a booth this year. We
you
are
know,
free. Yeah, we're free agents. So,
okay.
no booth to send people to or anything. But if you do see us running around in our black and purple as usual. Feel free to say hi. But I would say, like, you're just never going to be able to do everything. I have tried for, 9 shows now, and I'm never able to do just everything that I want to do. So just be okay with that. Follow the news for the things that you can't get to. You can read rAVe, you cannot read rAVe. There are lovely other publications in our industry too. So yeah, follow the publication that like the most, and get the news from them, and really prioritize the things that you want to do. And the last piece of advice I will give is, I always like knock myself for not like networking enough at shows, because I feel like I have to. But if you make like a couple of really good friends at a show, or a couple of really good connections, then like that's okay. I can be kind of a shy person, which I know is like hard to believe, but I have a hard time walking up to people that I don't know and just like talking to them about whatever. But I've gotten a lot better at it, and it's because I think I don't put the pressure on myself anymore. Like, I have to talk to 75 people at this event, and just let it happen naturally. And yeah, I think that you have the best show if you take a lot of the pressure off of yourself.
Yeah, Irwin, I say this at most of our sessions, and I'm sure you've heard it before, as I tell people if they're attending, and if they haven't added at least 2 or 3 or 4 LinkedIn connections at the show, they failed. They didn't understand the reason that they needed to be there. So I recommend.
Definitely.
Thank you guys very much. Irwin, if someone wants to reach out to you or find out more about what you do, how can they do that?
LinkedIn, probably the best way. I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on LinkedIn. Those are usually the 2 places where I'm most active. So otherwise, feel free to stop by the sessions. I'll be floating around pretty much the show floor all day on Thursday. So hopefully bump into some folks.
Steph, what about you? How can people find out more about what rAVe does?
Well, you can go to ravepubs.com. That is where all of our news lives. We are also on virtually every social media imaginable at rAVe Pubs, so you can definitely go do that. And then you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Terrific. Steph, Irwin, thanks very much for joining me today. And thank you very much for watching the show every week. We really do appreciate it. We'll see you on next week's show. Take care.